Yeah, yeah. Good morning to all of you. I have a great pleasure in welcoming you all for today's our masterclass sessions on sweat equity and ESOP issues. Today we have the panelist Sweta Ladda, who was there earlier also. Many of you may be knowing. She is not new to us. She was there earlier also. As you all know, she has got a multiple experiences in the alternate assets management, and she is working as a vice president, head compliance and secretarial. She has got over 15 years of the experience, and she has been working with the investment banking companies, corporate secretarial, legal, etc., and other things and all. And also, she is well versed with the financial sectoral regulations in India. And earlier, she was working with the NIIF Infrastructure Finance Limited as a company secretary and a compliance officer. And she was also associated with the Aditya Birla group of companies. She was with the Aditya Birla Capital Group, where she was led by compliances on legal and secretarial functions. And in fact, she is a qualified law graduate and also postgraduate in business management, and she comes with a very rich experience. And as far as the today's session is concerned, she has actually handled the various ESOP issues, especially unlisted companies where people have problem with listed companies are this okay, but unlisted companies, you can have your own rules, regulation, etc. and other thing, adult history, how do you do it, how do you frame it, how you tackle the things and other thing and all. And she'll be sharing her valuable experiences with us today on this issue. Today's our presenter is going to be Sakshi, who's actually going to present the various issues. She'll be taking us through Companies Act related ESOP and sweat equity. She'll also touch upon LODR to the limited extent what is applicable to the listed entities where they are required to comply with that. I think with these few words, I'll ask Sudhakar to step in and say a few things on this topic. Let me ask Sweta to speak in first as a panelist and then followed by Sudhakar, and then we'll start the session. Over to Sweta, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bharat sir, for your kind words. Yes, I'm not new to this platform, and Mehta is doing really a great job, and I always look forward to attend these sessions. Uh, and as you and today's topic is actually a very good topic, and I'm sure that Sakshi's presentation will add a lot of value to all of us. And from the ESOP thing, as Bala sir mentioned, that I have worked on a couple of ESOP schemes for our portfolio companies, and I will pitch in as and when required to Sakshi's presentation. Thank you, sir.
Over to Sudhakar, please.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Recently, in fact, some of the participants called me and they say whenever I used to meet the people, they were saying that there are so many types of issue of securities out there, like IPO, rights issue, preferential allotment, bonus, and now ESOP and sweat equity. So some young members are questioning that we may not get the opportunity to handle these kind of issue of securities. So how to meet that? So I used to say earlier also, and I repeat the same thing that for any professional, we may not be having to have an opportunity to handle each and every assignment. Sometimes it may so happen that you might be working for a bigger group of companies. That time you may get the opportunity, otherwise may not be. But you can always have a kind of simulation technique. Simulation technique means visualize that as if you are going to handle a sweat equity. Your management is asking you by that, okay, we have to issue certificate to Mr. A, B, and C. Then you visualize how you are going to make out the plan, what sort of legal provisions are there. If it is a listed company, if it is an unlisted company, like that you have to visualize it. Same as the case with ESOP, same as the case with preferential. So sometimes it may so happen that even if we are not facing that particular assignment, even if we are not getting an opportunity at that particular moment, what we need to do is we have to visualize that You know that in armed forces, they used to have an always that mock drills, as if the enemy is going to come and how we are going to fight the battle. The same is the case here also, Kibai, that you can have simulation techniques, visualize that you are going to handle that, and you can equip yourself for that. So coming back to the subject of today, in fact, employee stock options and sweat equity, these are the again issue of different type of securities, especially in case of sweat equity. It is a non-financial investment by the people. It so happened in the beginning of the, especially in case of startups and all, the two, three people when they're coming together to start some business, that is kind of a startup, maybe in the shape of a corporate or whatever the other modes of means are there. So everyone may not be able to invest money. Sometimes people may do that in kind. So they bring some kind of a value addition to the company, definitely. Say, for example, if I might be having some kind of intellectual property rights, or I might be having some kind of designs with me which will be beneficial to the organization. If that organization has to buy those designs from outside the market, they have to spend the money. So instead of that, I am contributing to the company. I'm adding some value to the company with my presence. And I am monetizing that contributions, whatever I am doing it. In lieu of that, I am getting some kind of a equity that is called as sweat equity. That means whatever the time, energy, I'm spending on that, which I am offering to the company, and I'm giving the ownership to the company. So that is because of that, in lieu of that, I am getting some kind of an equity that is sweat equity. Mostly, sweat equity is given to the promoters and the founders only, not to the employees of the company as such. And most of the time, sweat equity happens at the initial inception stages of the company. As far as the employee stock option plans are there, there are different type of is there employee stock option plan, employee stock purchase plans, similarly stock appreciation rights, phantom stocks. There are so many ways. These are all nothing but as far as the other than sweat equity is concerned, it is to attract and retain the talent the organizations give. Several times it happens that if you simply offer the salary to the employees concerned, tomorrow, if somebody gets a 5% increment, 5% jump or 10% jump or 15% jump, depending upon the employees, the attrition may be there. So to control the attrition, at the same point of time, you have to also attract the talent. Sometimes it may so happen, you may not be able to attract the talent with mere what's called monetary benefits only. Some kind of a ownership you have to offer, especially in case of senior levels. They expect some kind of a ownership sharing. So for that, employee stock option is one of the methods available. In case of employee stock options, most of the times it happens that the organization offers to the employees the equity over a period of time as per the ESOP plan, and that will be at a predetermined price. So most of the time, the predetermined price will be at a discount to that of market price is concerned or to the fair value is concerned. Not necessarily employee stock option plan is there only for the listed companies. Unlisted companies also can give ESOP plans. But the only problem sometimes it may so happen is in case of ESOP plans for unlisted companies, they may not be that attractive because the liquidity may not be there in the market. And always in the back of the mind of the employees, it may be there that if the liquidity is not available, when I am offering it to the when I'm supposed to quit the company, somebody has to purchase those shares from me. That somebody may be the promoter only. So he may not be giving me the fair value of that. That particular thing will be there in the back of the mind. But certainly these kind of issues can be addressed by way of a mutual understanding. And see, the ESOP plan, the basis for that is the trust between the management and between the employees. So unless until the trust is there, these plans will not be successful. So I give a pause here and over the presentation of Sakshi, and we will discuss it further. I'm handing over to Bala. Please take it forward. Thank you. Bala, you're on mute. No, still
Thank you
not.
very, thank you very much, Sudhakar. You touched up the very nice point, actually. In fact, if you look at it, nowadays, various women entrepreneurs who are actually taking it. In the recent past, Nykaa was one of the company where the Falguni Nair, she floated the company Nykaa, and this sort of the scheme actually worked, and the people were rewarded to the greater extent, which is a very recent success story. Everybody knows it actually. So really speaking, it has got its own intricacies. It has got its own bringing the success to the organization where you want to promote and achieve the growth, and at the same time, you also get the benefit out of it. These are all the nitty-gritties which are there. You rightly touched upon. Thanks a lot. Now I'll ask Sakshi to take over to the presentation. And I'll request all the participants to write their queries and put their doubts, etc., in the chat box, which we will be addressing it then and there only. If there is anything left out at the end, we will ask the people to raise their hands. We will answer it. Okay, over to Sakshi, please. Yeah, your presentation is visible.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Bala sir, Sudhakar sir. So today's our topic for the masterclass on issuer securities would be an insight into issue of ESOPs and sweat equity shares. So through this presentation, we will understand the various regulatory requirements for issuance of ESOPs and sweat equity shares. Along with that, we will understand the different types of ESOPs which are available to be issued by the organization to the employees for the different purposes. So both the either ESOPs or sweat equity shares, these are the tools issued by the companies to attract or retain the talent in the organization while aligning the employees' interest with the company's growth. Somehow these securities makes the employees through these securities the employees become the stakeholders of the company. So under the Companies Act and Share SBEB regulations, which are Share-Based Employee Benefit and Sweat Equity Regulation 2021, these mechanisms have been designed for the dual purposes. First is to empower employees to become the stakeholder in the company's success. And this is a way for the companies with a cost-effective way to incentivize the exceptional performances by the employees. We'll understand the different legal frameworks governing the ESOPs and sweat equity shares here. So first we will start with the ESOPs and its different.
One minute, Sakshi, please go back to the previous
Yes,
slide.
sir.
See, recently, very surprisingly, one company secretary was talking to me coincidentally on the same subject. When that ESOP, as Sakshi has rightly mentioned, there are two regulations. I mean, we have to comply with. One is the Companies Act, and second one is the SBEB rules, SBEB regulations. If it is a listed company. So, in case of listed companies, please ensure that you have to comply with not only the SEBI SBEB rules, but you have to also comply with the Companies Act. Because that gentleman was questioning me very surprisingly that when I'm complying with SBEB rules, why I have to comply with Companies Act? It's not so. Every company has to comply with the provisions of Companies Act, despite the fact you are complying with the SEBI regulations, whatever the other regulations may be. Because your company is a listed company, over and above the Companies Act provisions, you have to comply with SEBI regulations also. That doesn't mean at the cost of Companies Act provisions, you cannot comply with SEBI regulations. If at all any one of the participants are having this kind of review, please be clear that if your company is listed company, you have two regulators, you have two regulations you have to comply with. If your company is an unlisted company, you have only one regulator and one regulation. That is Companies Act is there.
You rightly touched upon Sudhakar, because this question has been asked by many people. When two regulations there, one of the regulations strict, if I am complying with it, why other? This sort of the question which used to be there in the mind. Only thing is, as you rightly says time again, all the companies are registered and incorporated under the very same framework of the Companies Act. They are bound to comply with the Companies Act in any circumstances. There is no doubt about it. That is number one. Number two, as per the listed company is concerned, it is your choice. You have gone to the capital market for raising the capital, because the other regulator has got entered in a contractual agreement with you. Those days it is known as the listing regulation. Today also it is there, but LODR regulation. There is a contractual obligation which is arising out of that one party to the other party, which is in any case has to be complied with this. This is very clearly to be understood, and it cannot be questioned whether this or that. There is no option is available. That is one thing very clear. I think you made it very right point. This question everybody should know. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Sach.
So we have bifurcated our presentation in two parts. First, we will be discussing employee stock option plan and its various kinds. In the other part of our presentation, we will be discussing about the sweat equity shares. So ESOPs are what are ESOP? ESOPs are the benefit plan offered by a company which provides an right or right to exercise the shares of the organization to its employees, directors, and the employees or the directors of its holding or the subsidiary companies. In the ESOP, the option to exercise, the option to grant, there is an option to exercise the shares which has been given on a predetermined price to the employees. ESOP under Companies Act 2013 has been described as an employee stock option, the option to the directors, employees, or the employees of the company or its holding company or subsidiary company or any other company, which gives us directors, employees, or officers the benefit to right to purchase or subscribe the shares of the company at a future date at a predetermined price. It is a very important aspect here to issue with the ESOPs that the price is predetermined. Prices are not determined at a later stage while the company is issuing the ESOP to the employees. There are multiple objectives to issue ESOPs by the company. One, it creates an additional wealth for the employees. It gives the social security benefits to the employees. The employee have the feeling of ownership in the organization. It attracts the good talent in the organization and retains the talent in the organization. So we will be discussing various types of ESOPs here. First would be employee stock option scheme, which is ESOP, and it is the very common one which has been issued by most of the organization. In this particular scheme, the employees are granted an options to purchase shares of the company at a predetermined price after fulfilling certain vesting conditions, like a minimum service period or a performance criteria. The other plan is the employee share purchase plan, ESPP. Under this, employees are allowed to purchase the company shares at a discounted price. And that price can be deducted through payroll over a specified period of time. The other kind of ESOPs are RSAs, restricted stock awards, which are the shares granted by the company to the employees or the stakeholders, subject to the specific conditions, which is relating to the vesting period or maybe the performance goals. And the recipient of RSAs gets the ownership of the shares after meeting those conditions only. The other kind of stocks are the restricted stock units, RSUs. So these are not the shares of the company, but for the RSUs, generally they do not get to pay for these particular shares. There are certain conditions for the RSUs as well, which is relating to their tenure or the performance goals, and it is often no cost to the employees of the organization. The phantom stocks are not the actual equity, but it is a promise which has been given by the company to the employees, and under this promise, the cash bonus equivalent to the number of the shares or the value of those particular securities is being given to the employees. So in the phantom stocks, no stocks or no shares has been given to the employees of the organization. However, the amount equivalent to the same has been provided. The last type of ESOP which we are discussing today is the stock appreciation rights, SARs, which is a right to receive the monetary equivalent to the appreciation in the value of the company shares over a specified period. So in the SARs, employees are not required to purchase the shares, but they can be given either the cash equivalent to the shares or the shares which has been decided by the organization.
Just 1 minute, Sakshi. So here the question comes that in these three type of stocks, the shares are not being given,
Yeah.
or if at all in RSUs, the shares given, if at all, it will be at a later stage. What is the reason for this thing? As I told you in the beginning itself, in case of employee stock option plans, that there are various methods are there in rewarding the employees. Sometimes the promoters don't want to dilute their holding. So without dilution of their holding or the voting power, which is very crucial for them, and at the same point of time, in case of unlisted companies, give a confidence to the employees that they don't need to worry as far as the liquidity of the stock is concerned. So these are different methods of giving ESOPs which have been divided over a period of time. Initially, it used to be only the shares. What happened was, in fact, if I am not wrong, this concept was there when in my formative years, around 86, 87, I heard about employee stock option plans. In fact, there some of the companies which have given, and they have given the stocks with some kind of a discount to the stock market or at the value, whatever the market value is there, employee stock options were given at the same price. It so happened there was a crash in the market and the share price has come down drastically. That point of time, the tax aspects were slightly different. You were to pay the tax at the time of not the exercising the plans, but at the time of getting the reward itself. That means options were granted, that tax was to be paid. So there was a lot of commotion was there. The people have paid the taxes, and they were to buy the shares if at all. That is at a different, at a higher price than the market price because of the crash of the market. So with all those things, what happened was employee stock option plans initially was not very attractive. So over a period of time, taxation aspects have been taken care of properly, and at the same, these are the different methods which have been devised over a period of time, even by the companies also, so that the employees at the end of the day, that attraction is there, the retention is there, and the benefit is also there. Yes, Sakshi, please go ahead.
I would just like to chip in here. So for ESOPs and RSU, the basic difference in ESOP and RSU are all same type of, scheme. But as Sakshi correctly mentioned, that in RSUs, employees are not supposed to pay as much as they are supposed to pay in ESOP, because generally ESOPs are issued at the exercise price generally would be the fair market price and the fair value of the stock at that point of time when the option is getting issued. But in RSUs, they come at a very, very cheap price. Or let's say in India, since you are not allowed to issue shares below your face value, so generally it is 10 rupees. So RSUs, an employee can purchase RSU at as minimum price as 10 rupees. However, for ESOP, it is a higher value. But what is the benefit of RSU and ESOP? Why companies, consider giving RSU? Because it is highly incentivized. It's a tool to highly incentivize your employee, because they don't need to give you so much the fair value of the stock. They need to just give you 10 rupees per share. And for company it is beneficial because it requires lesser dilution. Because suppose, let's say, if you have to give someone a monetary valuation of 1 crore rupees, of course in RSU you will need lesser dilution, because you are issuing that RSU at a lesser price. But in a growing company, so you might feel, then why not, why only RSU, why not ESOP, or why only ESOP, why not RSU? So it depends on, on the stage of the company where it is. If you are in a growth plan for employees, ESOP makes much more sense than RSU, because you will get those ESOPs at a high number of shares. Because in RSU, since your dilution is lesser, companies can give you lesser RSU just to, give you incentive of a particular amount. But for ESOPs, they need to give you higher number of shares. And if the company is on a growth plan, or at a growth stage where you can feel, or you can, you have a sense that the company share price will keep on increasing for next 10 year or 5 for 5 years, for employees, ESOP makes much more sense than RSUs. But for a company which is on a stagnant path, or let's say not a lot of movements are happening on a share price on stock market, RSU keeps as works as a more incentive for employees. And the other difference is, if you see your proxy firms or your shareholders representatives and shareholders, they don't like giving RSU so much, because in RSU the employees and the senior management get quick incentive because they are issued at a lesser price. So if the stock price is, let's say, suppose today it is 1,000 rupees and the RSU is issued at 10 rupees, so 990 rupees they are immediately gaining. But for ESOPs, it's not like that. For ESOP will always be issued at a fair price, that is 1,000 rupees. अगर आज का price है, then ESOP exercise will also be at 1,000 rupees, and the senior management and the middle management or the employees will get value only if the stock prices increase. So it is more aligned towards shareholders' expectations. So shareholders and proxy firms will not prefer RSUs, but RSUs nowadays has become a retention tool for many of the banks and NBFCs where the stock prices are on a stagnant path. So that is the key difference.
So
Shweta, you gave
just to add further, Bala, 1 minute. What she rightly said is, in case of ESOPs, those are given more or less at the market price or very slightly lesser than the market price. If that is the case, say for example, in case of Reliance, if that stock option plans have been given today, it's say at the rate of suppose 1,200 rupees is the market price. So we are giving it at say 1,180 rupees. Then what is the advantage for me? I could have purchased it from the market itself, because in the market it may come down even to 1150 for some time, or 1125 also. That time I will buy it. But please understand that this is a predetermined price and you are not exercising your options day one. Number one, between the grants and the exercise, you have 1 year minimum gap is required, which of course that I will, Sakshi will cover in her
Yeah.
presentation about as far as the legalities are concerned. Because 1 year, the period, only after that the stock options will be vested in you, then you will be exercising it. So between the grant and the vesting, there should be a minimum period of 1 year. And after that, you will not get, suppose if the stock options are giving you 100 to you, 100 will not be given day one. That vesting will take place depending upon the scheme of the company. Normally it happens 25% like that, they will give you over a period of 4 years. Once vesting takes place, you can exercise it again over a period of time. Then it may be another 4 5 years. So at a predetermined price of today, you are going to have a right to make an application for the number of shares which have been granted to you, maybe down the line 4 years, 5 years like that, or 3 4 years like that. That point of time, your 1180 rupees price or 1,200 rupees price today, maybe 3,000 rupees in the market. That is the advantage in case of stock option plans. Yes, Sakshi.
Correct, correct. So that's what I was saying. Sorry, Sakshi and Sudhakar sir. So that's why I'm saying that if the company has a potential to grow, or the stock price has a potential to grow from 1,000 to 3,000, in those cases, ESOP makes a clear sense to employees. So sometimes employees feel that, okay, I have got the RSU and the exercise price is 10 rupees and the stock is trading at 1,000 rupees. So I have got a lot of money in comparison with ESOP. But in a long term, for a growth stage company, I mean, people keep asking what is the difference in ESOP, and they will generally opt for RSU. Though in India, generally you don't get choices in terms of ESOP and RSU. Generally, whatever is the company scheme, they will go with that only. But generally, people feel that employees keep on saying that, oh, I have got the ESOP. What is the value for me? Company is at trading at 1,000 rupees, and the exercise price is also 1,000 rupees. What is it? What is it there for me? And had I got the RSU, I would have made lot of money. But then, had you got the RSU, you would have got it in a lesser number of quantity in comparison with ESOP. So for a growth stage company, for which you feel that share prices are going to rise in next 3 4 5 years, ESOP make a lot of sense for both the company and for the employees. And again, just to reiterate, ESPs, ESOP, and RSUs include or require dilution in terms of equity. However, for phantom and SAR, there is no dilution. It is a cash incentive kind of thing, but linked to the share price. Yes,
You're on
actually.
mute.
I only wanted to add between the RSU and the ESOP, it depends upon the company, which stage of the company is there
Correct.
actually. It is either at the startup stage or at the maturity stage or at the growth stage. Now, as you rightly say, at the growth stages, companies they have no problem. Then ESOP and ESPs, everything will work actually. But where the company is not in the growth stage, it is want to grow, but it has to create the market where a lot of performance issues are involved, where the talent is actually required to apply their mind. Performance are ensured to ensure the incentivize of the performance of the people. These RSU are normally given to the companies. That is the difference actually. So basically, it is the performance where it is required. RSU are actually preferred. That is it. Yeah. Yes, please, Sakshi. Go ahead.
For your valuable feedback on that. So we'll discuss the difference between RSU, ESOP, and phantom stock options in brief here. So in the RSU, actual shares are granted. However, there are certain conditions to that. In the ESOP, right to purchase shares at a predetermined price has been given to the employees. However, in the phantom stock options, no actual shares has been given. Cash equivalent to the shares value is been given to the employees. In RSU, whenever the shares are vested, the employees receive the shares. For the ownership in the ESOP, employees are required to exercise the options. And in the phantom, employees never gets the shares. They get the cash benefit of the same. In the RSUs, there is no payment required, and the shares are given on the vesting. In the ESOP, employees are required to pay an exercise price to acquire those shares, and for the phantom, no payment is required.
So I'll just do a minor correction here. So in RSUs also, since in India you are not allowed to issue shares below face value, you will need to exercise, though it's a very symbolic kind of exercise, but you will need to do that exercise, that those units, and you will need to pay that face value of shares. In US and other foreign countries where shares are allowed to be issued at a 0 rupees, RSU will vest, or RSUs will get credited immediately after vesting. You don't need to, or employee need not take any initiative or any action upon vesting. But in India, you need to say that you want to exercise those RSUs.
Okay. So for the tax, RSUs are taxable as perquisite on vesting. ESOPs are taxable at the time of exercise and as the capital gain tax on the sale. Phantom stock options are taxed as a salary income as the cash is received by the employees. So RSUs, once the shares are granted to the employees, then the voting and dividend rights are available to them. For the ESOP, once they exercise their right, then only the voting and dividend rights are available. However, in the phantom stock option, there are no voting or dividend rights available to the employees. So RSUs are used as an employee retention tool, while ESOP are used as a tool to encourage the employees to invest in the company's growth, while the phantom is just mimics the ownership of the stocks. However, there is no stock given to the employees. It just gives the benefits to the employees without dilution of the equity of the company. So first, we need to understand who all are entitled to get the ESOP. Any permanent employee of the company who has been working either in India or outside India, director of the company, whether the whole-time directors or not. However, independent directors are excluded from this list. They're not entitled to ESOP. Or any employee or director of the company, of its subsidiary company, or the holding company of the company are eligible for the ESOPs. Independent directors are excluded in every situation. And there are two other situations wherein the employees who is the promoter or belonging to the promoter group are also excluded from the eligibility of the ESOPs. And the directors who either by himself or through their relatives hold 10% of the equity share capital of the company, then they are not entitled to the ESOPs of the company.
Sakshi, that to give employee stock options, the employee-employer relationship should be there. That's why in case of directors, you will be giving this to only executive directors and not to independent directors. And at the same point of time, it may also be noted that non-executive, non-independent directors may be there. They're also not entitled for stock options because that they're not employees of the company. Executive directors, they are employees of the company. That's why they are entitled for. Yeah.
Now, before we go into the procedure for the ESOP, we need to understand what all laws are applicable for issuing ESOPs of the company. We have already discussed that. Sudhakar sir has already explained it, that in any situation, Companies Act 2013, along with its rules, which is the Company Share Capital and Debenture Rules 2014, it would be applicable on the company in every situation, whether company is listed or unlisted. However, in the case of a listed entity, along with the Companies Act 2013, the SEBI Share-Based Employee Benefits and Sweat Equity Regulation 2021 shall also be applicable on the listed entity. The companies at the time of issuing ESOPs are required to check if there is any applicability of Foreign Exchange Management Act or any other sector-specific regulations applicable on them or not. So the process for issuing of ESOPs, we have tried to make it in a very easy way here. Like company first needs to create a ESOP policy. Board meeting shall be convened for the approval of that scheme and convening of the shareholders meeting. If the valuation of options is required, then valuation shall be done by the registered valuer. Then a AGM or an EGM shall be convened for the approval, for getting the shareholders approval as a special resolution. After that approval, only the options would be granted. Form MGT 14 is required to be filed within 30 days of that. Then the shares would be there. Then there would be a vesting period, and after that, the exercise period would be given. After that particular period, which is generally 1 year, board meeting shall be called for the allotment of the shares. After the allotment, pass 3 shall be filed within 30 days to the ROC, and entry shall be made in the registered asset 6 for the same. There are certain important terms which are linked to the ESOPs, which we will be discussing here. First is the ESOP scheme document. The particular document which outlines all the terms and conditions for that particular ESOP is outlined in the ESOP scheme document. ESOP pool is a portion of company's equity allocated for the ESOPs. If the company has already found out number of shares, what would be available for the ESOP would be going into the ESOP pool. Grant, the process of selecting specific employees based on their roles and performance for the stock options is called the grant.
One thing is, Sakshi, when you talk about the ESOP scheme document, the drafting of the document is very, very important, where professional can play a very good role here. Because you know to visualize the various circumstances, including the separation of the employees, and the employee resigns, what happens. Then if the shares are allotted in between, what happens, whether it is to be surrendered, it will be allotted. All those sort of things which is to be spelled out very categorically here. Otherwise, you'll have the problem. I think Swata can add value to this, because the drafting of the document is very, very important when you're talking about the ESOP scheme. If you all remember, in the initial session itself, when we are actually talking on the drafting of the various documents of the company, we discussed elaborately on this. What is the drafting skill? What are the precautions we have to take into? Over to Swata, please, on this.
Yeah, sure. So in ESOP scheme for the unlisted company, I think somebody has asked that question in chat box also, that can we add a clause regarding restriction of transferability for the shares coming from ESOP? Yes, of course, you can do that only for a unlisted company. So for a unlisted company, you can add lot of things in your ESOP scheme document, like if there is a private equity investor or the venture capital investment in your firm, then they would anyways in their SHA they would say that whoever is coming as a shareholder on cap table of a company, they need to sign a deed of adherence or an additional deed with the investors also, and there they will agree with all the conditions of SHA. So in your ESOP scheme of an unlisted company, you can replicate those clauses. You can say that once you get those shares, you need to enter into deed of adherence or a SHA adherence agreement with us, and then there will be lot of clauses. Like then the clause can say that right of first refusal, that if the employee wants to sell those shares, they need to offer this to the investors, or they need to offer this to the promoter or the CEO or the management of the company, just to ensure that these shares are not going to competitors or to anyone who can create problem in the company. Or as a shareholder, they can demand a lot of rights, like they can demand for the inspection of registers, they can demand for the annual financials, they have a lot of rights, they have a right to appoint directors and all this thing. And then they can create a lot of ruckus also. So for unlisted company, from a protection point of view, investors, especially the institutional investor, do want lot of clauses just to ensure that the company's functioning is smooth. But for a listed company, you cannot include these restrictive clauses. For a listed company, employees, and once they get the shares, they are free to transfer it to anyone, because anyways, for a listed company, shares are freely available in market. If a competitor wants to become your shareholder, they can anyways buy it from the market. So for listed company, you can't have these, you don't have liberty to add these clauses. But for unlisted company, as long as you are adding these clauses in your scheme, and you are making this abundantly clear to all your employees that their shares are subject to all these restriction, you are free to go there. Of course, you will ensure that you are not adding any, illegal or any morally wrong clauses just to burden your employees. So of course that you need to take care of. But in the interest of employees, in the interest of the company, you can add these clauses. These are permissible. In fact, in some of the companies, I have also seen that companies have also added the clauses that once the employee is leaving, they need to offer these shares to the management or to the investor, so that investors or the management ensure that the once the employee is out of the system, they are not having those shares. So these clauses are also there, and these are acceptable. uh, but for listed company, you cannot have all these clauses.
Tata, somebody has actually put a question.
Yeah.
In an amended term, the paramount has been actually dropped from the definition of the eligible employees. Does it mean that we can give the ESOP to the consultants also, who are actually working full-time with the company and are not on the payroll of the company? That is what they have put a question. And here, when we talk about the scheme itself, say employee stock option, employee stock purchase scheme. The word employee is there. Employee means they have to be in the payroll. There has to be a employer-employee relationship is there. So long as the consultants are, though they may be working the full time, so long as they are not in the payroll of the company, they are not employee of the company. That is what I feel. You can say so.
Correct. I also feel that. So employees, this is the employee. Generally, it means someone who is on payroll of the company or your holding company or your subsidiary, and that is what the intention of ESOPs and RSU. But it's a very technical thing. I am not, at least I have not seen the scheme where the ESOPs are being offered to consultants and all. It's a matter of view, but generally the intention of the ESOP schemes are for to cover employees only. And one more thing here, interesting thing, that if you intend to offer it to your employees of your holding and subsidiary, you need to pass a separate resolution of shareholders, your shareholders. You cannot say that ki, okay, NRCN board will decide, because generally NRCN board have that power to decide कौन से employee को देना है and whom you want to cover. But if you want to cover your holding and subsidiary employees, you need to make sure that you have a separate resolution passed by your shareholders. So to that extent, lawmakers wanted to make it very clear that only your employees should get the benefit of the dilution which shareholders basically need to suffer. Yeah, and if you are diluting or if you are giving it to anybody else, shareholders need to know about it and they need to approve.
But one thing is that if you want to give those people who are working for the full time or something, what you have to do is you have to make them contractual employment for the period of say 3 years, 4 years, or whatever it is, so that they are in the payroll. But what is the contractual period? It can be renewed from time to time. That sort of a thing is actually possible, I think. Sudhakar sir, your view?
Yeah, it all depends upon what sort of a consultant you are. See that
Yeah.
there are employees, many organizations post the retirement of a person, they have been taken him as a consultant. That consultancy contract is nothing less than like an employment contract only. Except that since he is not an employee, employee provident fund contribution or gratuity, these kind of benefits will not be there. But certainly they may be entitled for stock options, they may be entitled for your medical benefits, they may be entitled for other benefits, whatever the company gives. So it is, you cannot say that a consultant is not an employee of the company. So employee, no doubt about it, the moment you are having employee-employer relationship, that point of time, certain laws will be applicable to you. Like I have mentioned to you, Gratuity Act, Provident Fund Act, these are the acts which are applicable. So once a person attains a superannuation age or a retirement age, that point of time, there is no meaning of having this provident fund and other things. So companies normally they put him in as a consultant, and they will be doing the same job more or less, okay, with the same kind of working conditions, working hours, and etc. things. So you can give that kind of consultants your employee stock option. There is absolutely no issue is concerned. But certainly, what is advisable is when you are drafting the scheme, that point of time, definitely we will put that definition of the employee. There, it is advisable to add that word consultant employees, also to be covered there, so that tomorrow somebody will not challenge your ESOP scheme altogether. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, actually, Sudhakar. But ultimately, what the test goes is, even as you say, after the post-retirement people employ them, the same job they are doing, etc., they are actually put in the contractual employment. Definitely what happened at the end of the year, as per the income tax is concerned, whether you issue a Form 16 or you issue a Form 16A. If you issue the Form 16, so definitely irrespective of whether other acts are applicable, not applicable, etc., that creates the relationship between employee and employer. The moment you issue a 16A where the TDS is deductible, then sort of the relation is there. I think it is better for the companies to have a suitable arrangement in order to give the benefit if they want to. So that's what I would put it actually. Yeah. Yes, Sakshi, go ahead.
So another term is the grant date. The date on which a company alloys ESOPs to the employees is the grant date. Then the exercise date, the discounted, the date on which the employees exercise their right to buy those shares at a discounted price, and from the company when they can be buying those shares is the exercise date. Expiry date is the last date for the employees to exercise their options, after which those shares would be lapsed. Vesting is the period between the grant of option to the date when they become eligible to purchase those options is a vesting period. Exercise period is the time period during which the employees can exercise their ESOP and purchase, after which the ESOP would be lapsed. The spread. Spread is the difference between the fair market value of the shares on the exercise date and the strike price is the spread. It is also called as the discount. So the implementation of ESOP, which can be done through two different ways. One is the direct route, another is the trust route. So the company can directly be giving ESOP to the employees, which has been covered under the direct route. And if the company makes an ESOP trust, and then the whole ESOP is governed under those trusts, that is called as trust route. So first, in the direct route, we will be discussing how it can be done. For the direct route, company is required to prepare a ESOP scheme. If there is an NRC committee in the company, then the approval of this scheme by the NRC committee. After the NRC's recommendation, the board's approval is required, and the shareholders' approval for that particular scheme is required. Once all these approvals are there in the place, then the grant letter is given to the eligible employees and for the issue of the options. However, in the trust route, it has been a bit different. So first of all, to go under the trust route, a company is required to form an employee welfare trust. And the loans, the company gives the loans to the loan to the trust for buying those shares from the company itself. Company issues shares to the trust, and then trust issues the options to the employees. Employees exercise the options to the trust, and the trust later transfer those shares to the employees upon receipt of the exercise price. There are certain compliances to the trust rule, that the special resolution is required for the scheme of provision of money for purchase of or subscription of the shares. In the case of listed entities, purchase is allowed only through the stock exchanges. However, in the unlisted companies, valuation is required to be done through the registered valuer. Value of the shares to be purchased with the money provided maximum of the 5% of the paid-up share capital of the company and the free reserves. And for the trustee, there are certain conditions that they cannot be the director, KMP, or the promoter of the company, or the holding or subsidiary, or any associate company, or relative of the director, KMP, or the promoter. And they cannot be beneficially holding 10% or more of the paid-up share capital of the company. Now, there is some difference between the ESOP direct route and the trust route, which is like in the direct route, shares are granted by issuing fresh equity shares. However, through the trust route, company funds the trust to buy shares from the secondary market and then trust transfer those shares to the employees. In the direct route, employees have the right to apply for the shares when vesting period is over. However, in the trust route, the trust holds the shares all the time on behalf of the employees. In the direct route, it gives the less liquidity of the, as the shareholder gets exit only if the company goes for the public. This is under the unlisted public company. However, through the trust route, employees can always get an exit by selling back to the shares to the trust. There are certain conditions which are required for issuing ESOPs. Then, as it has already been discussed, if the ESOPs are given to the employees of the subsidiary or the holding company other than the company itself, a separate special resolution is required to be passed for the same. There may be different terms and conditions for the ESOP different schemes, and full terms and conditions and the variation, if there is any change in the ESOP scheme, which can be done through the special resolution only. Whole complete rationale for the same shall be mentioned in the scheme. There should be minimum 1 year gap between the grant and the vesting of the option. In case of the merger as well, the time period shall be considered for the 1 year. If there is any lock-in period which has been given by the company, it shall be there only always. And in the ESOPs, unless the employee gets the shares, the ownership of the shares, they exercise those options. Till that time, they are not allowed for any kind of dividend or the voting rights. They will be given voting or the dividend rights once they exercise their right. So the amount payable by the employees at the time of grant of option, it can be forfeited if option is not exercised within the certain time period, or it can be refunded as well if the certain conditions are not fulfilled by the employees. The options which has been given to any employees are not transferable, pledged, hypothecated, mortgage, or any other ways cannot be done, and no other person other than the employee will be given the right to exercise those options. However, in the case of a death of an employee, their legal heir can exercise those options on their behalf. In the situation of permanent incapability, all the options which has been lying for that particular employee on the date of the permanent incapacitation, that particular day, all the shares will be vested in him. In the situation of the resignation or the termination of the employee, the options which are vested is that employee can exercise those options. However, the options which are not vested will be expired.
So here again, I would just like to add in that if the employee has resigned or is a bad leaver, I would say that he has been terminated, not because of performance, but because of some moral and other ethical issues. Then even the vested options can be cancelled because ideally those options should not have got vested. But your ESOP scheme should have all those related provisions that what will you do in case of when employee is resigning or when employee is getting terminated. So generally many of the companies will say that if he is getting terminated because of the performance issue, whatever ESOPs have got vested in him, he will be able to exercise those ESOP. But if he is getting terminated because of the policy issue or because of the breach or because of the fraud and all these things, then then the company can actually terminate those vested options also, can cancel those vested options also, and of course the unvested options can lapse. Because the thing is that when those options got vested, the vesting is always subject to employee meeting or complying with all the policies of the company. So generally I would suggest that companies should include all these clauses in the ESOP scheme also, that the
Yeah,
is
that is the
is
right
always
point.
vesting is always subject to employee meeting with the company's policies. So, and company should make it abundantly clear in their HRMS portal as well that they are, time to time displaying all the policies to the employees, because employees then may say, and I mean, it may be right from employee standpoint of view as well, that they were not aware of these policies. They were not disclosed or they were not informed whenever there was any change in the policy. So for the better precaution perspective, I would say that ESOP scheme should include that these vestings, or in fact, the grant letter should also include that these vestings are subject to employee complying with the employment agreement, complying with the policies, and whenever there is any change, with the changed policies.
You have touched upon the right points, Sweta. As we said in the initially also, the drafting of the policy document is very, very important, visualizing all the situation. That is number one. Number two, you made it very clearly. The people may come out, I am not aware of the conditions. That should not be the case, because the awareness should be made. The policy document should be made available to the employees. Similarly, any amendment which is taking place from time to time, that also should be made available, so that the question of, not aware, etc., that situation should not actually come out. That is very clear. So that
Because
means it's
just
a
from
very,
practical standpoint, I just wanted to clarify that when the company starts or when there is a startup, you will not have that kind of matured policies or matured employment agreement. You are just desperate to have a very senior management CXO in your company, and you will just issue a one letter pager to them that okay, your band is so and so, and your this is your employment contract, and your remuneration is so and so. But as the company matures and as you get a kind of institutional investor in your company, you will see that they are actually emphasizing a lot on governance. They are actually emphasizing a lot on having the standard employment contract or standard employment agreements. So while whenever institutional investor or private equity investor comes in your company, you will see the next level of employment contract will be very different, and they will be very formal and standardized. But what about the previous employment agreements which you have already issued to your KMP? So those employment agreement will not have that kind of clauses. So they can say that okay, my employment agreement did not have this kind of thing, or my employment agreement never restricted me for this thing. So you need to make sure that the employment agreements are also standardized and communicated, and you know if such kind of breach happens, then what is the stand which you need to take, because it should not be injustice to the employees also.
yes, Sakshi, go ahead.
So there are certain requirements to be for the disclosure in the
Actually,
director.
Sakshi, before you go for the disclosures, just go to the previous slide.
Yes, sir.
See, for the benefit of the participants, I want to tell two, three things. You might have heard the words like grants, vesting, exercise, lock-in, contract, like that, four, five words we have heard. It is very important to understand that what is a grant and what is a vesting and what is an exercise. Normally, what happens is that once any company wants to comply with employee stock option plan, As we have discussed it, a draft scheme is to be placed before the shareholders, and you need to have the approval of the shareholders by way of a special resolution or ordinary resolution, whatever the case it may be. I think private companies, ordinary resolution, and all public and listed companies, special resolution is required. After that, now a question comes that is it required that employee stock option plans are to be offered to all the employees of the company? Not necessarily. It is entirely the discretion of the management to whom the ESOPs are to be given, to whom the ESOPs are not to be given. Sometimes the scheme may be devised that only to very senior people the ESOPs are offered. Sometimes it may be to the middle level only. So very rarely it happens that they offer that schemes to the lower level employees also. That means we have a lower management, middle management, and the top management. Most of the times it is to the top management, maybe extended up to the middle management. It is one part of it. So it is not mandatory for any organization to offer the employee stock option plan to every employee of the company. Second is what then once the scheme is approved, the employee stock option committee or normally the NRC committee has been vested with the powers for the implementation of that particular scheme or particular plan, whatever we may call it as. When you are giving the grants, at that point of time, there is that contract what Shweta is referring to. That grant letter is nothing but a kind of a contract only between the employer and the employee. Under what circumstances the employer is offering these stock options to the employee, subject to what conditions. Everything is to be crystal clear. It should be there. Whether in the scheme, whatever it is there, it is immaterial. In the scheme, it there doesn't mean that in the you don't need to mention it in the options. Sorry, that grant letter. The grant letter is always to be there. Whatever the conditions are there, those conditions need to be reiterated. And after that, that is to be signed by the employee concerned that he is abide by that particular letter or the whatever the terms and conditions are stipulated in that particular grant letter. After the grants are given to you, it differs whether same is to be given across the organization, not necessarily. To Mr. A, you may be given 100,000 grants, whereas to B, you might be giving only 1,000 grants. It all depends upon to whom you have to give how many, not necessarily by virtue of the designation of the person concerned, not necessarily the longevity of the particular employee with the organization is concerned. It is entirely at the discretion of the management how that grants are to be given. Normally, it is given in the scheme itself, and okay, by that this level of people will give these kind of things, blah blah blah, all. But that particular power is normally given to the that committee concerned. Then comes the vesting takes place. Vesting means that it is the time when you are having a right to exercise and get the shares. So between the grant and vesting, there should be a minimum period of 1 year, if not more. After that, once that shares are vested in you, then you can exercise that over a period of time. You will be given a window of 1 to 4 years. Within that window, depending upon your convenience, you can exercise at any point of time. But as far as the price is concerned, it is predetermined. Then comes, suppose if I have been given, say, 1,000 grants, whether the 1,000 will get vested in me after 1 year, it is not so. Again, normally it depends upon the scheme of the company. The vesting of the grants will take place over a period of 4 years or 5 years. Again, that is depending upon the performance of the organization, performance of the department concerned, performance of the employee concerned. Normally, this is the discretion what normally they use it for the purpose of vesting is concerned. Once that vesting is taking place, as I told you that sometimes, say, for example, if the 1,000 grants have been given, they may say that over a period of 5 years or over a period of 4 years, 25% of the grants will be vested in you. Subject to, again, the performance of the company. That means what? I am going to get in the first year, say, 250 what's called options vested in me. So I am going to make an application for the 250 shares at the predetermined price. And the perquisite value, if any, is there, I have to make the payment, and then I will get the shares allotted to me. That 250, I may get, I may not get. It's against 250, depending on my performance, I may get only 200. Or I may get even 150 also. It depends upon that. Then question comes that the exercise, as I was mentioning to you, once the vesting takes place, not necessarily in the very first month, I have to exercise my entire option. Suppose 250 shares have been given to me. That 250 shares, at my convenience, depending upon my liquidity position or the market position, I may be able to exercise in small bits and pieces also over the exercise period, whatever I have been given. Then the question of lock-in comes. Is lock-in mandatory? Answer is no. Nowhere in the Companies Act or in the BSA that SBB rules are concerned, lock-in is a condition is not there. Normally, what the companies is, some companies they do is 30 to 90 days or whatever it may be. In fact, in Reliance, when I was working for our ESOPs, we used to have 30 days lock-in used to be there. So this is precisely how the scheme operates. Of course, then as far as your separation is concerned, death is concerned, or whatever is concerned, that Sakshi is going to mention further in this. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Sakshi.
There are certain disclosures which are required to be given in the director's report. The details relating to the granted options, options vested, options exercised, shares arising as a result of exercise of options, the options left, exercise price variation in terms if there is any, money realized by exercise of options, number of options in force, employee-wise details of option granted, whether they're the KMPs or what. Employee who receives their grant of options in any 1 year of option amounting to 5% or more of the options shall be given. Identified employees who were granted option during 1 year equal to or exceeding 1% of the issued capital shall also be disclosed in the director's report. So there are certain contents which are required to be given in the explanatory statement when we go for the special resolution. So total number of the stock options granted, identification of the classes of employees entitled to participate in ESOPs, appraisal process for determining eligibility for the employees, requirement of vesting and period of vesting, maximum period within which option shall be vested, exercise price or formula for arriving at the same, exercise period and process of exercise, lock-in period, maximum number of options to be granted per employee, condition under which options vested in employees may lapse, as Shweta has mentioned regarding the termination for misconduct or anything, statement to the effect that company shall comply with the accounting standards as applicable to them. Now there are certain requirements to be complied under SEBI Share-Based Employee Benefit and Sweat Equity Regulations 2021, which can be termed as SBB regulations. These regulations are applicable on the listed companies issuing ESOPs or any other share-based employee benefits to their employees, directors, or the other eligible persons. So under these guidelines or regulations, the eligibility for the ESOPs are the permanent employees of the company, its subsidiary companies, or the holding companies, directors, excluding independent directors, employees of an associate company or the group companies as approved by the shareholders. In these regulations, employees of an associate company or the group companies are also allowed to be given the ESOPs or other share-based employee benefits. The schemes which are governed in the SBB regulations are the ESOPs, employer stock option schemes, employer stock purchase schemes, which is ESPs, stock appreciation rights schemes, general employee benefit schemes, and the retirement benefit scheme. Under these particular regulations,
Sorry, Sakshi, if I can just pitch in. So as Sakshi was explaining that these are the eligible employees, so maybe it is there in your next slides as well that the promoters are generally not allowed for ESOPs because the expectation is that the ESOPs are generally there to incentivize employees, and promoters are already in have a lot of equity shares and have the shareholding in the company. So incentivize them and to have their skin in the game, ESOP should not be the mean. So that is what the intention of the lawmakers when they said that the promoter should not be allowed for ESOP, because otherwise then promoters can misuse the entire scheme. But for the startups, this exemption is given that if the startups are registered with DPIIT for a particular period of time, they can give ESOPs to their promoters as well. And also there is one condition which says the director who are already holding more than 10% of the shares in the company, they should also not be given ESOP, because then again it tends to, for the misutilization of the scheme. But for the startup, particularly for startups, they have given this exemption because they understand that startups generally don't have lot of means of funding to just to boost startup and promote startups. They have given this exemption that till the time there is some specified time period which DPIIT has specified, they can have these exemptions under ESOP schemes. Yeah.
So under these SBB regulations, the scope has been expanded to the employees of the group companies and associate companies as the eligible participants. And the shareholders' approval is required by a special resolution for the ESOP scheme. In case of the ESOPs to the promoters or the directors holding more than 10% of the equity, a separate special resolution is required. So the minimum vesting period is of 1 year, and which can be waived off in the certain cases, which is the death of an employee, permanent incapacity, or the termination due to restructuring or organizational changes. The company can specify the exercise period within which the employees must exercise their options after vesting. The price can be determined by the company subject to the compliances with the applicable standards. ESOPs are non-transferable. However, only in the case of employees' death, benefit can be transferred to the legal heirs. Companies can administer their ESOPs either directly or through the trust, which we have already discussed. If a trust is used,
I
there
think
must be
Sakshi, 1 minute.
Yes.
When you mention that ESOPs are not transferable means only options are not transferable. Once you exercise the options, once the shares you have been allotted, that you can transfer it.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
The right to
Options are not
exercise.
transferable.
Yes.
Yeah. The grant is not transferable. Grant you cannot pledge, grant you cannot mortgage. Once it is vested and you exercise that, you are free to do whatever you want to do.
If the company is using a trust for the ESOPs, they must be adhere to the provisions of these regulations, including the restriction on the secondary market purchase. There is some flexibility in the trust administration that they can be managed multiple schemes through a single trust. Trusts are allowed to purchase shares from the secondary market within specified limits. Companies are required to disclose the details of the ESOP scheme in the director's report and to the stock exchanges as well. And the disclosure requirements include the details of the options granted, exercised, lapsed, and the outstanding. These are the key disclosures. The shares allotted upon exercise of options are subject to the lock-in period if it is specified in the scheme or as per the SEBI regulations. So companies are also required to comply with the accounting treatment as specified in the Ind AS 102, share-based payment, or any other applicable accounting standards on the companies. If there is a non-compliance for the issue of ESOPs, then these regulations will attract the penalties under SEBI Act 1992 and Securities Contract Regulation Act 1956. This is in addition to the Companies Act. So the register of ESOPs is maintained under SH6. Registers are required to be maintained at the registered office of the company or any other place if the board has decided so. And the entries in the register to be authenticated by the CS of the company or any other person authorized by the board. So there are certain case laws which we can discuss here, which is relating to the issue of ESOPs. First is the case of the Biocon Limited and versus DCIT, Deputy Commissioner of Income Tax. This matter was relating to the issue of ESOPs on the discount. And in this particular matter, Karnataka High Court has given the judgment in the favor of Biocon Limited, wherein the ESOPs, the court allowed ESOP discount as a deductible business expenditure. Similarly, in the case of the DCIT versus Kotak Mahindra Bank Limited, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal has also given the judgment in the favor of the Kotak Mahindra Bank on the lines of the same lines of the Biocon Limited, and they have given that the position that discounts on shares allotted under an ESOP are legitimate business expenditure deductible under Section 337, subsection 1 of the Income Tax Act. In the case of Crazy Pin Private Limited, ROC Gujarat has passed an order in March 2024, which has been related to the premature allotment and excessive allotment. So the directors and the company both were penalized for the violations of these acts. They had given the shares more than what was required to be allotted to the directors, and the allotment was done prematurely as well. We are also required to consider the requirement of dematerialization nowadays, which is mandatory for the public company and the private company other than the small company. So shares can be issued only in the dematerialized form. So the companies are required to ensure that before making any offer, entire holding of securities of its promoters, directors, KMP are dematerialized. And then accordingly, they will be able to comply with the Rule 9, 9A and 9B of Companies Prospectus and Allotment of Securities Rules 2014. So from the taxation aspects of the ESOPs, it is a double point at which taxation arises in the hands of the employee. At the time of exercise, the difference between the market price and exercise price is added as the perquisite under the salary. At the time of sale, employees are liable for the income tax on the sale of shares according to the applicable laws. Thus, adapting and aligning the compensation structure is essential to maintain fairness in the interest of the employee. There are certain difference in the ESOPs in the startups versus the established employee organizations. So for the startups, ESOPs generally form a significant part of the compensation at an early stage in the companies. It helps to conserve cash while providing employees with the equity ownership. For the established companies, they are used as the long-term incentive for the key employees, and they can be used to drive the performance by giving a compensation to the employees. There is some exemption which has been given to the startups, like an employee who is receiving ESOP from an eligible startup need not to pay tax in the year of exercising of that particular option. Currently, only the employees of 3,605 startups certified by Interministerial Board under income tax are only eligible for the tax deferment. So the employees are getting benefited through the ESOPs. However, there are certain risks and challenges for this as well. As the benefit, employees can be getting appreciation in the value of shares over the time. They get the ownership in the organization, which maybe leads to the improved performance and the loyalty towards the company. And depending on the jurisdictions, employees may enjoy favorable tax treatment upon exercising options of selling of those shares. However, the risks which are there for the ESOPs as well, which is that value of stock options can fluctuate, which may lead to the potential financial uncertainty for the employees and sometimes the loss as well. And for the vesting conditions, employees may have to wait for the years to realize any value. And they might they may leave the company before the vesting period ends as well. And the giving ESOPs, issuing more shares to the employees of the company. So the risk of dilution of this shareholding of the company is always there for the existing shareholders. Yeah. So now we will be starting with the sweat equity shares.
So just from the tax point of view,
Yes.
whenever employees actually realizing or getting those ESOPs, and the ESOPs are getting vested and exercising those ESOPs and getting shares, the tax would be perquisite tax in the hands of employees. So basically that will depend on the which salary bracket you are. So that will be as per the perquisite tax. And whenever employees are selling those shares, let's say after vesting and after exercising, they are selling it after 1 year or 2 years, then it will be treated as a capital gain tax, and basis your holding of those shares, the capital gain tax would be applicable short term or long term. Yes, what, Sakshi?
Now we'll be starting with the sweat equity shares. Sweat equity shares are those equity shares issued by the company's directors or employees at a discount or for consideration other than cash for providing their know-how, market making available rights in the nature of intellectual property rights or any value addition they have done. So this which employees are entitled to sweat equity shares will be the permanent employees of the company who has been working in India or outside India, any director of the company, whether whole-time director or not, any employee or director of the subsidiary in India or outside India, or of the holding company of the company. We can describe value addition as any actual or anticipated economic benefits derived or to be derived by the company from any expert or a professional for providing know-how for making available rights in the nature of intellectual property rights, for which consideration is not paid or included in the normal remuneration to be paid. On the similar grounds for the sweat equity shares, it has been governed under Section 54 of the Companies Act 2013, along with the Rule 8 of Company Share Capital and Debenture Rules 2014. However, the listed entities are also required to comply with the Share-Based Employee Benefits and Sweat Equity Regulations 2021, along with the Companies Act. They are also required to see if there is any applicability of the FEMA or any other sector-specific regulations applicable to them. So the process for issue of sweat equity shares, to issue the sweat equity shares, if there is an NRC committee in an organization, NRC's approval is required. Then a board meeting shall be convened for the approval of the board of directors and calling of the shareholders meeting. Valuation of shares shall be done, and the valuation for the value addition for the know-how and the intellectual property rights for which it has been given, the valuation shall be done by the registered valuer. Shareholders meeting shall be convened for the obtaining the approval of the shareholders through a special resolution. MGT 14 shall be filed within the 13 days. After that, a meeting shall be convened for the allotment of the shares. After the allotment, relevant form pass 3 shall be filed with the ROC within 30 days, and the entry shall be made in the register of SH3. There are certain other conditions with respect to the sweat equity shares, that the special resolution shall be authorized and valid for the maximum of the 12 months. Once a special resolution has been passed, the allotment can be done within 12 months only. Company can issue maximum of the sweat equity shares up to 15% of a paid up capital in a year, or shares of the value of rupees 5 crore, whichever is the higher. However, issuance of sweat equity shares cannot exceed 25% of the paid up equity capital at any time. Startup may issue up to 50% of the paid up capital up to the 10 years till the time they are considered as the startups. There is a lock-in period of 3 years from the allotment. Valuation shall be done by the registered valuer for the fair price. Valuation of intellectual property, know-how, value addition shall also be done by the registered valuer only. Valuation report, under the valuation report, gist of critical elements shall be specifically given. So the amount of the sweat equity shares issued for the consideration other than cash, which doesn't form part of the assets of the company, can be carried out to the balance sheet of the company and treated as the managerial remuneration under section 197 and 198. So we have to be, the company needs to comply with these two sections as well. So with respect to sweat equity shares, there are certain disclosures which are required to be given under the director's report, which is the reason and justification for the issue of the sweat equity shares, class of the shares issued, total number of shares issued showing number of shares issued for consideration other than cash, the name of the individuals of the allottees holding 1% or more of the issued share capital, class or classes of directors or employees to whom issues are issued, principal terms and conditions, including the valuation, total number of shares arising as a result of the issue, percentage of the equity shares of the total post issued and the paid up share capital of the company, the consideration, including consideration other than cash received or benefit accrued by the company from the issue of sweat equity shares. Diluted EPS can also be required to be mentioned under the director's report. So the certain contents which are required to be given in the explanatory statement while passing SR, the date of board meeting at which issue of sweat equity shares was approved by the company, reason and justification why the company is issuing sweat equity shares, classes of shares and total number of shares which are required to be issued, class or classes of the directors or employees to whom the shares are to be issued, principal terms and conditions including the valuation, time period of association with the company of those individuals to whom it has been given, if there is any relationship of the directors or employees with the director of KMP that needs to be disclosed, price at which the sweat equity shares are proposed to be issued, consideration including other than cash, if any, which has been received for those sweat equity shares, ceiling on the managerial remuneration needs to be considered here, and the diluted earning per share as per the accounting standards. The register of sweat equity shares is maintained under SH3. Similar to the other registers, it is required to be maintained at the registered office of the company or any other place where the board has decided. And the registered and the entries in the registers are authenticated by the CS of the company or any other person if authorized by the board. So there are certain amendments under SBEB regulations over which we have discussed earlier. So earlier, the sweat equity shares and employment benefit schemes were regulated under the separate framework. Now the separate regulation, single regulation, which is SEBI SBEB Regulations 2021, has been issued and unified these into a single regulation, simplifying compliances for the listed entity. The limits for the issuing sweat equity shares for the startups has been increased to 50% of the paid up share capital. This is the overall limit for the whole time. Now the pricing formula for issuing sweat equity shares is aligned with the regulation for preferential allotment, so that it ensures the valuation and the market consistency. Thank you so much. So, sir, you want to add on something to this?
Yeah, I think as far as sweat equity is concerned, we already discussed it. And only one thing I would like to say is whenever sweat equity is given, as we have mentioned, it is against the know-how or IPRs or any kind of value addition. If these things are of capital in nature, that means you are creating an asset. That is called as a balance sheet item. Then obviously what will happen is your asset, you will create it on the asset side and the corresponding entry on the capital will be there. Sometimes it may so happen that is not having that whatever the value addition, it is not in in the nature of a capital asset. So that point of time, it is a revenue in nature, then it is to be routed through the profit and loss account only because you are not going to create any asset for that. So you will credit again your capital account, but you will debit your profit and loss account. That's why you have mentioned that wherever it is going to be revenue in nature and you are making the payment to any kind of directors or the manager, that means the remuneration of the directors, executive directors, and the manager is going to be regulated by the managerial remuneration guidelines. That's why you have mentioned that that is to be taken into consideration the provisions of 197 as well as 198 are concerned. That is what as far as sweat equity is concerned. And again, the same thing for sweat equity also, there should be a proper agreements should be there with the person concerned to whom you are issuing it. And again, sweat equity, like your ESOP is in section 62. When you are giving ESOPs, you don't need to give a rights issue to the existing members of the company. Whereas in the case of sweat equity, that is not so. It is neither a preferential allotment, nor a ESOP, nor a rights issue. But you need to have the shareholders' approval for issuing the shares on sweat equity basis. Again, the same thing, it requires a special resolution in case of public and listed companies are concerned. And when you are approaching the shareholders for that special resolution, in the explanatory statement, you need to give the full details to whom you are going to offer the sweat equity shares, what purpose you are going to offer that. That details are to be clearly there. The price needs to be determined by way of a by the registered valuer, because whatever the asset or the services you are going to get, what is the value of that? That somebody has to determine the valuation is concerned. So you need to have a registered valuer who has to value that. That valuation modalities are also to be given in the explanatory statement. So that means what at the end of the day, what it requires is the shareholders are to be fully informed so that they will be able to take an informative decision by giving their approval by way of a special resolution. Yeah. Now, Bala, you may take that. A lot of questions are there in the chat box.
Yeah,
You might,
yeah.
Sachi, you
We'll
may
go with the
take
question.
off your screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think taxation aspect, somebody has put a question. I think that has been explained actually. What is the taxation? We talked about the perquisite and capital gain tax actually. That is one thing. And second thing is there, I got one doubt. Can an employer waive off his vested ESOP shares? I have actually checked with the act and rules, but it does not, it is silent as per my understanding. If employer gives a letter and board approves it, is it okay?
So it's an employee. I think they want to know if employee can waive off the vested options. Of course, they just don't need to give any letter also. They can keep silent on that, and the vested option will anyways lapse or expire.
Again, the tax aspect which has been
So
discussed
there won't be
actually.
any tax aspect
The
because
topic is
by
indeed
getting a right, by getting a vesting, you are getting a right to exercise that options vested in you. So if you are not exercising that option, there won't be any taxation will be there on that. As Shweta rightly mentioned, you don't need to inform the management about that you are not exercising that. It will get lapsed. That's it.
somebody is asking a question whether ESOP can be given at a face value also.
ESOP can be actually given at face value, but the general practice is that ESOP is always given at the fair price because it serves two purpose. It helps in wealth creation for the employees, but from employer standpoint of view, it actually ensures skin in the game so that employee is motivated to give their best. So the face value, if we give them at a face value, it is basically called as RSU, that it is being issued at a deep discount. And generally shareholders and the proxy firms don't like issuing ESOPs or these shares or these options at a face value. because then it immediately give the incentive to the employee or incentivize the employee without putting any hard work towards it.
See, only
Can an
one thing I
ESOP
would
or
like to add, 1 minute, Bala, I would like to further add is that
yeah,
it is not like that it is the decision of the management or the board. It is to be approved by the shareholders. So when you are going to give, not in a fair value or a market value, but in a face value, and you require shareholders' approval, why they will approve that? If there is a strong reason for that, suppose, say, for example, if the market rate is 280 rupees share and you want to give it 10 rupees to your employees, if there is a strong reason for that thing and you are able to convince your shareholders and your, of course, your nomination, remuneration committee, board, whatever you may call it, at that point of time, forget about your proxy advisors and all. I'm not concerned with them. If I am able to convince my shareholders are approving that, then I can go for that. But why they will approve that? Why that kind of a disparity? You have to convince them. There should be a strong justification for that.
Correct, correct. And then proxy advisors, generally retail shareholders are, not that much equipped to see what kind of things to approve, not approve. They nowadays they serve as a, very strong advisor to our retail investors. They will generally go by those advisors thing.
can an ESOP ESPP restrain employee shareholders who bought the shares under the ESOP ESP plan from transferring their share? I think this we discuss actually what the share belongs to them. They can actually transfer because only in the intermediate period, when the vesting period is there, any lockup period is there, then only there is a restriction will apply. Otherwise, they can freely transfer. I don't think there is anything on
So
that.
1 minute, Bala, it is not that simple. See,
Yeah.
if it is
Yeah.
a listed, Bala, 1 minute. If it is a listed company, yes, shares are freely transferable. If it is an unlisted company or if it is a private company, then what will happen is, as Shweta has mentioned it, that shares should not fall in the wrong hands if when employee wants to sell it. That's why what happens is the first right of refusal. Normally, the promoter or the company restrict that. First right of refusal is to be given to the existing shareholders. And if they are not exercising that, then they can go it freely, something like that. Because you cannot completely restrict the transfers in case of closely held companies or private companies. But at the same point of time, you cannot completely give that freedom also to them. So it depends upon how you are handling as far as the transferability part is concerned.
Yeah, you're right, actually, because transfer cannot be restricted as such, but a certain reasonable restriction, depending upon private and unlisted public company, etc., that is possible. Yes, that is right.
Yeah.
Can an ESOP, ESPS impose condition of outgoing employee arising out of his resignation to be shared to the ESOP trust? I think this also you discussed actually. In the case of the resignation and other thing and all, what is the thing? And again, the scheme we talked about it elaborately. Okay. Explain applicability of the capital gain. I think we talked about it. Capital gain, we talked about it. In an amendment, the term paramount has been, I think this also we discussed, I think so there. Is it mandatory for a private company, an unlisted company, to appoint the ESOP trust? For a private company or unlisted company, is it necessary, mandatory to appoint the ESOP trust?
No, it is not mandatory.
No, it is not. Yeah.
Okay. Can ESOP be given to the directors? I think we discussed this. Is it possible to give share to the employees the same scheme with a different vesting period, lock, and other related items and conditions?
The vesting period, exercise of options period, and all those things should be the same. You cannot discriminate that. Where you can discriminate as far as ESOPs are concerned is that how many number of options you are getting. I mean, the grants are being given to you and the vesting is going to take place. That should be there. But you cannot say that, okay, but at the top level management, the vesting will take place like this. But lower management, the vesting period is like this. That you cannot discriminate like that.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. Equal
And
employment
similarly,
policy should be.
I don't know whether Sakshi has covered it or not. Whenever ESOP scheme is there, it can be amended with the approval of the shareholders. But that amendment should not be detrimental to the interest of the employees of the company.
Need to understand under ESOP how number of shares actually need to be structured to grant the specific or all employees, as some employees are critical for a company, but the new one are not drawing high salary. Some are very old employees and are not drawing high salary, and some employees drawing high salary.
I think, Bala, I explained this thing already. Whenever you are giving the ESOPs, you are not giving as per the designation of the persons concerned or this thing only. It is entirely the committee, the compensation committee or the ESOPs committee. It is entirely at their discretion to whom how many are to be given and all. So they will take different things, okay, by the which class he belongs. I mean, to which level of employee he is concerned. All those things they will see, and accordingly they will devise the plan. Mostly HR plays a crucial role here.
I think next question is consultant. I think we talked about it, consultant. Then they are asking the PPT. We said PPT is generally not shared actually because the recorded webinar will be available through the YouTube, which contains the PPT, which you can actually access it. That is the thing. If the ESOP is a trust route who recognize as a shareholder of the company.
See, it is the trust. It is the trustee actually, see, because the trust cannot be a member of the company. So it is the trustee, his name is entered in the register of members. But as per the regulations, the shares held by the trust, they don't have the voting rights. And at the same point of time, in case of listed company, when you are filing the shareholding pattern, you cannot show this as a public holding. You have to say it is non-promoter, non-public shareholding. There is a separate this thing you have to create and show it in the shareholding pattern.
Any specific employee can be excluded from the ESOP scheme.
Yeah, though while defining ESOP schemes or NRC generally empowered to decide, they can just mention, instead of saying that these are excluded, they can just mention that these will be the covered employees. And then they can decide to whom they want to give and to whom they don't want to give.
The FEMA and reporting of the issue of ESOP, it is simply reporting at the time of the issue of the exercising the option to convert the option into equity share. This is actually applied under the FDI and overseas investment in an employee of the Indian company, and the company deputed to overseas company. Then the Indian company also issues ESOP. In case of the ODI, the procedure is the same. The employee are not aware of allotment of the ESOP within their deputation period in the overseas. Your team may like to elaborate the compliance under FEMA so that employees could not be put into disadvantage position and possible contravention under the FEMA.
If any expats are there in the organization as employees of the company, you can offer ESOP shares to those expat employees also, subject to the RBI regulations. Okay. So whenever an expat is going to invest in your company, because when it is coming by way of ESOPs, I don't think that your FDI rules in toto will apply as such. As an individual, investors are going to make investment. Whatever the RBI regulations are there, they have to be complied with them.
In a vesting period, various employee, I think this we discussed actually. Sudhakarji, hope we are covering FCGPR related compliances and the ESOP grant exercise NRI employees. No, that you know to follow the RBI, whatever the reporting is there, that is not part of the thing, but whatever is recorded in the RBI, you know to follow. That's what we said, other sectoral regulations. Can ESOP be granted to the concern? I think we discussed the consultant matter earlier. Also be used cashless ESOPs. Of course, the consultant also NRI foreign employees. Trust also in consultation with the RBI process for NRI and foreign employees. I'm not getting
Your voice
exactly
is
what is it.
cracking. I'm not able to make that.
One minute.
Take it forward from here.
Yeah, here what he is saying is, he is actually saying, consultant ESOP can be cancelled, allotment written. Can the ESOP also can be used cashless ESOP? Of course, in the consultation with the RBI process and NRI foreign employees. That's the question he is asking.
See, as I told you that, in case of RSUs or phantom stocks, whatever, that is what I think he is referring to, cashless ESOPs bans. In such case, because we are not discussing the RBI regulations here in detail, so that it is better to refer to RBI regulations. If it is permitted, you can do it, otherwise not.
He's saying being the tax for NRI employees based on the DTA can also be covered. Okay. Can the allotment of the share be made when the trading window is actually closed?
See, allotment is not a part of trading. Okay, subscription is a part of trading. Allotment is not a part of trading. So allotment can take place during the window closure period.
What happens when an employee exercises lesser shares than what has been actually vested in him or her?
See, that this is what we have mentioned already. If I got 100 shares vested in me, it is how many I want to exercise, it depends upon me. Suppose if I have no money, then I may borrow the money, I can invest it. If I don't want to borrow the money, then I will not exercise the option. So it will get lapsed. That's it.
What would be the cost of acquisition at the time of the capital gain of the share allotted under ESOP?
There won't be any capital gain. I think Shweta has mentioned this thing. The perquisite value will be there. Say, for example, if my predetermined price of my share, my ESOP value is say 600 rupees. The day when I am exercising that, the market value is 1000 rupees. So 400 rupees is the perquisite value, market price minus the predetermined price. That is 400 rupees is the perquisite value on which I have to pay the tax.
He is asking about the capital gain tax. He says,
Capital
when
gain
you
tax
are
is that when I'm selling the shares after allotment, when I'm going to sell it in the market, my cost vis-a-vis my market value, that is the gain, depending upon the long term or short term, whatever it may be. That is the capital gain tax. So what I need to pay on the date when I'm exercising my options means when I'm making an application to the company by, okay, I'm giving you the cost of the things and perquisite value. Both these things are to be paid to the company. Company will deposit the same with the tax authorities. Perquisite tax is concerned, you have to pay to the company at the time when you are exercising your options. Okay. Yeah. So that at the time of exercise, there is no gain. It is only the perquisite value. Gain will comes when you're selling it in the market.
so that means the cost will be considered the same price at 600 rupees, as you give the example. So that means the initial cost of 600 rupees, whatever the market price, that will be taken as a capital gain.
That is perquisite
Correct?
value, not a capital gain. That is not capital gain. As I told you, market price is 1000 rupees.
Yeah.
My exercising price is say 600 rupees. The difference is the perquisite to me because my employer is giving me the shares at the rate of 600 rupees as against the market value of 1000 rupees. So the 400 rupees is considered as if he is providing me a perquisite. On that, I have to pay the perquisite value. It is nothing but my tax applicability rate. So when I am giving the application to my employer, I have to give the number of shares multiplied by the determined price plus the perquisite value. That consideration I have to pay and get the allotment. Once the shares got allotted, got my credit to my demat account, I will be selling it in the market. Then I may have a gain or I may have a loss. Then the tax treatment will be accordingly further to that.
So that gain and loss at the time of the selling will again be calculated with reference to the 600 rupees price?
No, it won't be. It won't be. It will be at the market value on that particular date. It is 1,000 rupees.
No, market value 1,000 rupees. But at the time of your exercise, it was a cost of 600 rupees. So 600,
I paid
1,000
the
minus
perquisite value.
600.
Bala, I paid the perquisite value also. I paid the perquisite value
So that
also.
means the 1,000 rupees will be taken.
Yes.
Okay. Then the next thing is, what is the accounting treatment for the issue of the sweat equity?
What?
What is the accounting entry
I
for
have
the issue of
explained
the
that
sweat
already.
equity?
I have explained that already. Balance sheet item, if it is that means whatever the value addition or the IPRs or the know-how which is coming, if you are able to monetize that, it is by way of an asset, then yes, it is a balance sheet item. Otherwise, it will be a P&L item. Then the treatment is to be given accordingly.
In the explanatory statement, when the equity share are for consideration other than the cash, what is meant by the requirement to disclose consideration other than the cash?
See, if you are getting an IPR, suppose you are getting intellectual property rights, right? Suppose I am having some patents registered in my name. I am giving those patents to the company, or I am allowing the company to use those patented things for a particular period of time. So you will be valuing that whatever the gain to the company is concerned, and as against that you are giving me sweat equity.
Whether the time of exercising the option, the equity share can be partly paid?
It cannot be.
Okay. Taxation, I think we discussed enough. If the company secretary is eligible for the ESOP, of course he will be, because he is also being an employee, he is eligible. Since most of the employees would be insider as per the SB PIT, whether any disclosure is required by the employees in SEBI, SAST will also be required to comply with.
This SAST is to be complied with by the promoter, not the employees.
But for PIT, once they become shareholder, or anyways, for PIT, so it's not a condition that you need to be a shareholder. Whatever information you are having, you're not supposed to trade. But one good thing is that generally during the shut period, employees are not supposed to trade, or a designated person is not supposed to buy or sell those shares. But if your ESOPs are getting vested during that period of time, you can exercise those shares. So your credit to your demat account can happen even during the shut period, but you cannot sell those shares.
Yeah, that is basically the insider compliance code which is formulated by the company is required to be complied with, depending upon whatever the period is there, whether it is the window closing period or trading period or whatever it is, that has to be complied with. Again, you have to ensure that the UPSI is there. That is actually kept secret. That is another thing which is there. Okay.
See, that Bala, one thing is that, no, 1 minute, Bala. As far as the ESOP shares are concerned, and non-ESOP shares are there, PIT regulations are slightly different. There are certain relaxations given for the ESOP shares. So there are SEBI FAQs are there. Please refer to that. And when we have organized the PIT regulations masterclass, we dealt with very in detail. Number one. Number two, if I am a director, executive director, or if I am a designated employee, I have been given ESOP shares. So I need to, if that shares are more than 10 lakh rupees, I need to file the necessary disclosures by way of returns with the company in turn with the stock exchanges. The returns are to be filed.
Why few financial experts are against the company issuing the ESOP, stating that profits could be deployed?
See, in the case of ESOPs, you are not losing any profit. Okay. So that's why this question is not relevant at all, because by issuing shares to the employees, you are not losing anything as such, Only thinking you will be gaining. Because as I mentioned to you, in fact, in the beginning itself, that to attract and retain the employees, you need to give some kind of a thing. So will you say that the compensation is going to affect your profits? It is like that only. This is one way of compensating the employees. Yeah.
Just a thought. While allotment can be made when window is closed, only challenge is crediting the share for the designated person as the amount of employer is locked in, locked for the concerned company trade. Only thought can be coming when the
I think if I am not wrong, the depositories are freezing the designated employees' I mean their accounts only for debits, not for credits.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Perquisite need not be paid to the company, but duly taxed. Yeah, that is right. It will be added to the perquisite. That will be taxed. The tax will have to be paid on the perquisite. That is the thing. I think that is all the
That's
questions.
what
I think.
in fact, when we were there at Reliance, that point of time, we used to charge the perquisite tax you have to pay along with your share application.
Yeah, correct.
Because at that time, see, perquisite, this thing, you cannot deduct the TDS in the normal way. As far as the exercising of your employee stock options are concerned, that perquisite tax is to be paid there and then itself. That's why that normally the employers collect the perquisite tax at that point of time.
Disclosures are nowadays through the SDD. In case of the dematted share, there must be a disclosure under the SAST, and the PIT is not required by the employee. That's what somebody has put. I think with that we have
employee
come to
stock options you don't require because it is at a predetermined price. It is okay. That's why that C is nothing to do with this.
that is all. I think I have come to the end of the questions actually. So if somebody would like to ask the questions, etc., if somebody is raising the hand that we can address to them, let me see. Anybody raise the hand? I don't see anybody's hand is risen. Anybody would like to ask questions? If anybody would
I
like to
just
ask
would,
questions.
Shweta here, I would just
Yeah,
like to mention that the views are personal. I mean, a disclaimer that it doesn't represent the views of my organization, and also it should not be construed as a advice or legal opinion. And recipients should not practically, when they are making any ESOP schemes and all this thing, should not act solely upon this. I mean, you should consult your legal advisors and all, because we have discussed lot of sections in that. Just a disclaimer
you
from
are
my
absolutely right. You are absolutely right, Sudha. It is disclaimer from the Mehta and Mehta part of it also. What we are discussing is generally the rules and regulation in generality, not with reference to the specific issue. If anybody has got the very specific issue, etc., they'll have to consult, they'll have to take it forward accordingly. What we are discussing is the interpretation of the rules and regulations. What is concerned in nature in general. That is there. Okay. Yeah, anybody would like to ask two questions, they can raise the hand so that we can permit you to ask question, please. Yes, Rishikesh, you can unmute and talk. Can you unmute and talk, Rishikesh?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so my doubt is one shareholder agreement was there with 6 promoters for granting sweat equity to managing director. Okay, 10% of sweat equity. After that, some more investors came, some 2, 3 promoters also came. So, do I require to amend that shareholders agreement, previous agreement, or will it be applicable to the new promoters also?
By default, it won't be. You have to see that what is there in the because shareholders agreement it is on one-to-one basis.
Yes.
Anybody joining by default, you won't be. unless until you incorporated those clauses in the Articles of Association. If
Oh,
they are there in Articles of Association, obviously as a shareholder, anybody and everybody have to abide by the articles. But if they are not part of the articles, it is only a private agreement between the shareholders. Company is not a party to that. Then a new shareholder, if he has to be a party to that shareholders agreement, you have to amend that agreement.
suppose that clause is there in the articles, that is securities.
Then you don't need to, because articles anyway are binding on every shareholder.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Anybody else? I think there is nobody. That's all I think so. So I think since we already answered all the questions and we also heard Rishikesh, I think we can close the session actually.
Yeah.
I would definitely say it was a wonderful presentation given by Sakshi, well explained, well actually put down all the relevant rules, regulations and the scheme, etc., differentiating between the schemes. She has done a very good job. My great appreciation to Sakshi, that is one thing. As usual, Sudhakar, I don't have to give you a special thank because you are always there in your vast experience and your contribution is a great, in fact, which has been acknowledged, received by many of the participants here also. There are a lot of thanks messages which I have not read out here. It is written very clearly here. That is one thing. And second thing is, as per the Swata is concerned, she is really, really excellent since she has handled the many issues. She touched upon some of the practical issues when it comes to the restriction, when it comes to the private company, unlisted company, etc. Very great. We are greatly benefited to Swata. She's really, really given us insightful of this particular ESOP and Sweat Equity share. Thanks a lot for Swata for your taking up the time and spending the valuable time and providing the things. Many thanks to you. It was really, really a good learning session, not only personally for me, for the participants. Even you can see at this particular point of time, almost about 140 plus participants are there. I saw it was plus 240 and plus people who attended the session. It really says. And Sudhakar puts it very clearly, each and every company secretary does not get the opportunity to handle everything. Some few people are lucky to have some of the things. Some people may handle something, but at the same time, everybody wants to be a part of it. IPO, FEO, all this scheme, etc., and other thing and all. As he rightly puts it, we'll have to wait for the opportunity to handle. That's the thing. But nevertheless, it has given a very good, great experience. Thanks a lot to everybody. With this, we come to the end of the session. I declare we close the session here. Yet another session we'll meet in the next weekend. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Bala
everybody.
sir. Thank
Thanks.
you, Sudhakar sir. And thank you, Sakshi. It was indeed a very learning session for me as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Fact to say, Bala,
Okay, have a good.
Bala, I must say that in fact today presentation was to be given by someone else, but there was some kind of an emergency there, so we requested Sakshi to reply, and okay, comment to our rescue, which she did. An excellent job, Sakshi. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much, sir. I also learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.